In case you missed our last episode of Life with the Polites, MRL, Marriage, Relationships, and Love, here's what you missed. What we like to talk about this morning is very specific to our relationships today. That's expectations without standards. Expectations without standards. And we find this a lot in our relationship building. But when we hear the words expectation, when we hear the words standards, what comes to mind? Think about what I just said. When we talk about expectations and standards in the relationship realm, what comes to mind? For many of us, these words are used interchangeably. They substitute each other. But in actuality, they're different. Our expectations and our standards in the relationship realm are different. They're completely different. And when we think about our expectation, we're thinking about certain ideas. We're thinking about how we would like situations to turn out or how we would like other people to behave. Let me give you an example. I expect a person that I'm dating to communicate with me every day throughout the day. That's an idea of how you want someone to act towards you. Then our standard is a guideline. Our standards are rules of how we are to conduct ourselves, what we'll accept, what we'll not accept. An example of our standard is I have high standards of a person that I'm dating when it comes to honesty. That's a standard. That's having the willingness to know that you have a principle for what you are willing to committing to. Here's my argument, Lady P, this morning. This is my argument. That lowering our expectations allows the seeds of our relationships to be planted. Whereas establishing and possessing standards is the key to finding, growing, and maintaining a good relationship. And I talk about the seed of lowering our expectations because you want a relationship to blossom, to grow, to manifest. But in the same means, you have guidelines and standards that you stand by. I say all of this because some of us have humongous expectations, but we don't have the standards that equal them. And that's what I meant by the difference. We have to be able to not just have expectations while not owning any standards. And when we do that, we let ourselves down. I'm going to say that again. We can't just have expectations and not owning any standards. Because when we don't have any standards, we're letting ourselves down. Whom we are to become, our qualities and our values and our worth, we're depressing them. And I think that's a mistake a lot of times coming into relationships. We're willing to not have standards or releasing our standards, or if we haven't had an opportunity to manifest within ourselves to discover standards to have a relationship. So then what we do, we just embrace expectations. We want a particular person to behave a certain way toward us. We're asking things out of a person that we feel that we need. On the flip side of that, of having a standard, there's a guideline, there's a requirement, there's a rule that this is what I want. This is what I expect. It's fascinating because a lot of people use those as punchlines. Well, I have expectations, I have standards, and we use those interactively like they are the same, but they're not. Each carries a different weight in a relationship. They carry a different weight. And And my claim, in my opinion, is that your standards carry a heavier weight than your expectations.
I'm listening. Go on ahead.
I believe that your standards set the principle, the groundwork, the foundations of what you want in a relationship. Not having standards, if you don't know your standards, how am I supposed to know them? If you haven't spent the quality time to love yourself within. That's hard for someone to come into a relationship and have expectations when they haven't spent the quality time needed to know themselves, to know what they want, to have a future realistic plan of this is what I want, and the people that I am willing on offering myself to, this is what I will accept, this is what I will not accept. On the flip side of that, we embrace the expectation rule because we're looking for someone to behave toward us a certain way. And I'm going to get to the words might and could a little later, but that's what we're really looking for. We're looking for people who might behave a certain way or could behave a certain way. Neither of these are expectations. An expectation is a requirement. An expectation is what's required to be a part of a relationship. But I said earlier that we can't just have expectations without owning standards. We have to own some standards. So how do we own some standards? Owning standards means that you've spent some time with you. You've matured and you've come to a level to what you want in life, the quality of life. And in order for you to achieve the quality of life, you've established this box of standards. Things that you will accept in your life, things that you will not accept in your life. Because when we don't own any standards, like I said, we're letting ourselves down and we're diminishing whom we are. The definition of the word diminish means that we're becoming less and we're accepting less of the value and the worth that God has placed in us. So owning some standards is huge when we're talking about dating, when we're talking about building a relationship. And the question for our social media audience is that if we really think about it, could it be that many of us either don't have value within ourselves enough to establish standards? That goes back from spending time with yourself. Or we let our standards go. Or we let our standards go while maintaining our expectations for a person and a relationship. Why would you let your expectations go just to be with somebody? That's a for real question. That's a for real question. And what that describes are real relationships today. People that are willing on letting themselves go for a relationship. They're called on and off relationships. What is an on and off relationships? An on and off relationship that goes on for months and sometimes years until someone in the relationship has finally had enough of it. On and off. On and off. It's on and off because there's no standard. There's an expectation that I need you to behave a certain way. And an expectation is not a standard. So you step back and you ask yourself, people that allow themselves to be committed in on and off relationships, what do these people see in this type of relationship? What do they see?
A next thing until the best thing.
I like that. The next thing until the... Okay, I like that.
The next thing until the best thing.
Because... I like that because that really drives me into what I was getting ready to say, is because what they truly don't realize with a on and off relationship, they're not seeing or realizing truth. So that falls right into place what you just said, waiting on the next best thing. Because the truth of the matter is this. The truth is that the relationship lacks standards. And could it possibly be that the next best thing will have standards? But then it doesn't just fall off with one person having standards. Both have to have standards. Someone got to have some standards. Both have to have standards, anybody's standards, in order for two people to come together and build a healthy and mature relationship. Think about this. A relationship with no standards. Think about this.
Anything and everything goes.
Wow. Okay. I like that too. But think about this. Maybe this falls in that realm of what you just said. A relationship with no standards. They love who the person could be, what they could do with their lives, and how that person can treat them at times. Would that fall into what you just said?
I'm still thinking about it.
But I mean, it's ironic, you know, because a relationship with no standards has no foundation. You said waiting till the next thing to come along or things that matter. You know, for one, there's a domino with that. If you have to wait for someone to show you some standards, that means that you haven't spent enough time with yourself to discover and possess the standards that you need to obtain the quality of life that you deserve.
I think you said something earlier that's very important, that when a person has standards and those standards are not kept, or those standards are diminished, because that's the word you use, what will begin to happen is that frustration will begin to set in.
That's right.
And so everyone has standards, and that's why, again, no matter what type of relationship that we're talking about today, or what type of relationship people may be analyzing this morning as they're listening to you, the reality is, again, that when a person's standards is being diminished, frustration sets in. That's from a person with a job. It does. Frustration sets in. And so I think the bottom line is that there really could be no, because you start off by saying expectations without standards. And I think there can be no expectations if there are no standards. Your standards is what's there first, because out of your standards is your expectations.
Absolutely.
However, you know, when we realistically talk about relationships, you know, we know no relationship is going to meet the expectations of the other individual 100%. So then it becomes a matter of how you would then deal with the expectations that are not being met. I've just been sitting here and listening, just been waiting just to receive what it is I'm supposed to share. And I really do feel that to have standards, everyone has a right for that, to have that. But expectations is not a one-way thing. That's two ways. And so what do you do when you're in those relationships, which is probably where you're going with this. What do you do when you're in a type of relationship when your expectations are not being met? I don't think in life that we really have a right to expect someone to meet all of our standards 100%, but it's how you're going to deal with the expectations that are not being met, that are according to your standards. You follow what I'm saying? So there will be some that will be met, there will be some that will not be met. So how are you dealing with how are you dealing with the ones that are not being met? Okay, so I guess I'm listening to, I'm just trying to figure out how do you deal with them. But I don't want to probably change your flow or your message, but how are you expecting someone to deal with the other person not meeting those expectations?
Well, again, I look at expectations in a relationship, and again, this is my opinion. I look at expectations as seeds. Not saying that you don't have expectations, but you plant your expectations for them to manifest and grow. I mean, you'll be surprised that there's an enormous amount of people that have huge expectations. Okay, off the break, that can be extremely risky in a brand new relationship because you're still bonding, you're still learning, and you're coming in a relationship with humongous expectations. I use the terminology of lowering or planning expectations because an expectation in a relationship, in my opinion, needs to grow. It needs to be watered. An expectation helps the standard stand because now what you're asking or expecting how a person to behave towards you, your expectations. If this individual has standards, the quality of his standards will be in sight of your expectations. So what am I saying? I'm saying that as you grow, you reveal the fruits of what your behavior request is. And through the fruits that's being revealed, the standard that you already have aligns with that.
I think this kind of goes back to what we were kind of sharing last Sunday. If individuals, to piggyback off what you're saying, because you're using the word lowering, and I don't think anyone, when they first hear that, is going to feel comfortable with the fact that they have to, and I know where you're going, so that's why I'm giving it to start it this way. But I don't think anybody, any human being is going to feel comfortable with the fact of hearing, oh, well, I got to lower my expectations with what's important to me. And so it goes back to what we were saying last Sunday, how if you spend time first before actually, saying this is the person or this is it, you would probably find yourself not having to lower too many of your expectations when you get into a relationship, because the whole thing about having standards is that you have these standards expecting that these things are going to be met. So but if you don't take the time to spend with individuals to know what their standards are, then you find yourself getting into relationships and trying to make it work with the sacrifices, with the compromising. And then it becomes to where one person may be lowering theirs more than the other. So I think the key thing is we, it goes back to preparation, preparing, spending time. So that when you spend time, with an individual, you kind of will know where you're compatible and where you're not compatible. And before you get into deep, you can say, hey, I don't think this is for me. But I think the issue today is that we don't take the time and then we jump right in. We become intimate so quick because, once you become intimate, those ties are there at that point. So if you take the time and learn each other's standards, have those serious conversations, then you might find yourself not having to find yourself lowering, so many of those expectations, because because that's why I'm kind of quiet. I'm listening to you, and I'm like, as people get older, you're not. How can I say this? You're not comfortable with lowering your expectations, which comes from your standards, because you have lived long enough to know A, B, C, D, and E. Who you are, like you said. You have lived long enough to know who you are and to have set these standards to know what you would tolerate, what you're able to tolerate, what you based on the fruits that you have. You know what I'm saying? Yes, we do get into relationships, and sometimes the unknown arises, and you find that some of those standards or some of expectations may be lowered. So I think the answer really is, before anyone begins to lower anything, is that they have to spend time, take the time to spend time with individuals to make sure that this is who it is that, that they're saying, that they're getting ready to say, I do to. Because once you say I do, it's no question to how much you're going to lower, how much you're going to give, and how much you're going to take. So I hear what you're saying, but I'm reasoning in my 50 capacity. You know what I'm saying? When I'm in my 20s, I can see, okay, I can lower the blah blah blah. But when you get older, you like you ain't got time to be lowering anything because you've been there, done that. You follow what I'm saying? So it becomes a matter of taking your time and really learning this person before you really get serious and intimate with the other individual.
So I'll say this, okay.
And for those who watch it, tell me if you say yay or nay on that point.
let me say this.
The older you get, so I can hold your thought, because the older you get, you don't have a lot of time to be wasting on lowering too much of what you have already become and established, because you have not taken the time to get involved with this person. That's just my take on that. But go ahead, baby.
So this is the rewind.
Okay.
Your expectation is an idea. Your standards are rules. That's the difference. Your expectations is an idea of how you would like someone to behave towards you. Your standards is a rule, a guideline. That's the difference. I hear what you're saying the older you get, but that's the difference. When I say lowering your expectations, Lady P, I'm throwing this out there, and our social media audience can chime in. Some people have very unrealistic expectations.
That's why I understand what you're saying.
Some people do.
I
some
agree.
people have very unrealistic expectations. So let me finish this thought.
Okay, I'm gonna write that down.
So when I say unrealistic expectations, I'm talking about the idea and the process in which they expect someone to behave toward them, not the standard. The standard is the rule. The standard is the guideline of what I am going to accept or what I will not accept.
Okay.
You had something you were getting ready to say.
No, go ahead. Keep along. Go ahead.
But I mean, it's a very fascinating topic because we interchange those two words. We interchange expectations, and we substitute it with standard, and we substitute the word standard with expectations, but they're totally different. They're totally different. I use the analogy, and I'm gonna go back to it, because I'm not saying that we should dismiss having expectations. I'm not saying that. All I am saying that expectations should be realistic, and that's at some point in relationships today, there's nothing wrong with planting a seed and seeing how your expectations manifest themselves. That's my principle in bridging the gap toward the maturity and the growth of a relationship. In other words, I would rather drive the city limits 30 miles an hour than come in a relationship going 55. Because I want to be able to see and observe.
See, but I truly believe, and I hear, to some people, I'm going to say this because I think what you're saying is a fair statement, but at the same time, it could be a judgmental statement. Okay? Because even with one person saying some people's expectations is unrealistic, that can be a judgment statement, because what may be an expectation for me may not be an expectation for you. And just because it may be unrealistic to someone, it does not mean that there isn't another person out there who has that same expectation. So how can you say that expectation of anybody is unrealistic? I'm with you, but I'm just being advocate here. Because sometimes we have to be very careful, when it comes to this Christian walk, and that's why I'm taking this perspective. When we take it, I understand. When we take this Christian perspective, the moment we start saying that someone's expectation is unrealistic, you're now making a judgment of what that person, of who that person is and how that person is seeing things. You never know there's another person for that person that has that same expectation. It's for them to find that person. You understand what I'm saying? Or to get to know someone who, oh, I see you. It's just the truth. My expectation may be, I'm trying to think of something that's really like unrealistic, that normal person. You see, you can't even say normal person.
I gave an example.
But you know, but what I'm saying is, I think that we just need to be, I understand what you're saying, but I think that we just need to be, people individually. You said something last week. What goes on in our relationship is our relationship. Blah, 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 blah. So what you may see that may seem unrealistic to someone else may not be unrealistic to that person and the person that they're with, because they have those combinations. You follow what I'm saying? Because everyone's tolerance level and acceptance level is different. So I do. So I'm just gonna let you flow.
Well, don't get me wrong. I understand what you're saying, because there is a mix and a match for everyone. And exactly. I gave an example.
Exactly.
A expectation may be that you want me to call you during the day, throughout the day. My job may not allow me to do that, but then there may be someone else's job position that could allow him to do that.
Exactly.
So exactly.
And that's why I say it's all about you getting to know that person first, putting time first, so that you understand the balance of each individual expectation. Because, you know, I don't think anyone really has a right to say someone's expectation is nonsense or is unrealistic. I mean, unless it's really like far out there. So I do understand where you're going with it.
We live in a time, in a season today where I believe, and this is my claim, we live in a time and a season today where many people have high expectations, thinking that they're standards. And that's this whole conversation is the divide. Is to understand the difference between an expectation and a standard. We live today in an environment, where a lot of people have high expectations, thinking that there are standards, and there's a domino of that, because that's not true. An expectation is not a standard. An expectation is an idea of how you expect someone to behave towards you. Not a rule or a principle or a guideline that you've dug in and said, hey, this is what I want, this is what I'll accept, this is what I won't accept.
So basically, standards is for you. Expectations involve others.
That's right.
And I understand that. I think the audience kind of understand that. However, it's still, you know, I would still have to draw back to the point that, in order for you to be able to handle expectations, you got to spend time with other individuals to know if your standards and their standards meet each other. Because when the standards are the same, then the expectations are pretty much the same. When the standards are different, then the expectations are different. And do you agree? Okay.
I do.
Okay.
I do. I mean, you know, we come to a point and I think in the world of social media, I think a lot of us have read and seen, especially on TV, that there are in relationships, there are some expectations that come across as being requiring or sometimes being demanding of a person to act or behave toward them. And what's fascinating behind that is that these people don't realize that how they want people to conduct themselves toward them is lesser than the standard that they're expecting. I mean, let me give you an example. You can't have a standard of needing commitment in a relationship when you conduct yourself in an irresponsible way. So, I mean, that's the world, that's the real world that we live in. We have to define the difference and we have to approach the two differently. Not giving,
I agree to that.
Not giving up.
I agree to
By
that.
no means am I suggesting that we should give up our expectations. No, I'm not saying that. We should refocus on where our expectations are, but we should never, never settle to lower or giving up our standards for a
And
relationship.
so basically what you're saying is that when you have a standard and you see the expectation is not being met or the expectation is not there in another person, that's when you mean by lowering and planting seeds
exactly.
to get the other person to fulfill that expectation. And that's where the compromise and sacrifices come in relationships. So on that point, yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. But at the same at the same time, I feel that it's taking your time and really getting to know him before you get serious, because then you will find yourself not having to lowering, all these expectations and planting seeds to get someone, and that's life. That's life. Life is all about planting seeds, in order to see growth, to receive, whatever it is, in relation. And I think that's a key thing that's missing probably in relationships, is that, like you said, because if one person come in with a high expectation, and is not being met, if they don't know how to, give and take, a relationship won't grow. It won't go anywhere. So, in these days and times, no one wants to really, and I'm not going to say no one, because that would be an unfair statement, but it just takes time, and sometimes people don't have the time or don't want to take the time to plant seeds and nurture and water when they does have these standards,
and when
they do have the standards.
And if I can just continue on that mindset, when we don't have the time to go through those things you just said, then we're showing that we're demonstrating poor relationship skills. Because we want something.
Yeah, then you shouldn't be in the relationship.
Exactly.
Then you shouldn't be in the relationship.
Because we want something, but we don't want to get our hands dirty to work toward it. I mean, a relationship is about hard work. A relationship is about effort. A relationship is about sacrifice. If these are the three qualities that you are charging yourself for, and as you said just a moment ago, you're not willing to have the time, then you're demonstrating poor relationship skills, because you want to hitch to a wagon to take you somewhere, but you ain't trying to do no driving. You're not trying to get your hands dirty. I mean, a relationship is the bonding of two people, not one carrying the complete load. And when we get back and we start talking about expectations and standards, it takes both of them having both for the relationship to grow and to become healthy.
Well, you know what, Mr. P, and that's why, when we first start out with life with the polites, I think the first thing is to understand what are the standards first that God has set.
Absolutely.
Because when you have those standards there first, according to, and we don't have time for that, but when you go into your Genesis chapter 1 and 2, you see those standards there. People, that's why I always say, we read the word, but also look at the examples. You understand the example that's being set. When you read Genesis chapter 1 and 2, you see the standard is right there of what's supposed to be. There are 5 essential things I can remember right now that are right there that God has already said that shouldn't be there when it comes to male and female, that's supposed to be in that relationship before they say I do. So when those 5 are not there, and I can remember my mother many years ago, when I was in my 20s, she used to say something about the 5 essential things, and it wasn't worded like the way the Bible would say, but it was the way she would, like application, the way she would look at it. You know what I'm saying? And it's just true. If those certain things are not there, then what standards are you actually even setting for yourself and expecting someone to live up to? Now, that's where I can say it's then unrealistic. Because if those expectations is not what God Himself has said when He has created relationships and marriages, then that's when I can say those are unrealistic. Okay.
Something that's ironic that that's the foundation. But we live in a world today that we want the blessings of God without his standards, without the standards that he's talking about in regard to relationships. We want the blessings and everything else that'll go along with it, but we don't hold fast to the standards that he gives us through his word. How are you going to mature? How are you going to build a relationship, a foundation without those principles? But you're seeking a blessing. You're seeking a blessing. You know, it's real talk for today, because that's part of it that a lot of people want, but the labor is so intense that they want to keep their hands clean. It goes back to what I said earlier. A relationship is a lot of work. Your hands have to get dirty. There's going to be some heavy lifting. There's going to be an enormous amount of sacrifice. There's going to be compromises. It's not just going to roll out a red carpet and you're going to walk on it and walk toward the quality of life that you want.
Okay.
I mean, but it goes back to what I think is some of the issues that are facing many of us today, is that many people lack the standards when it comes to dating and relationships, because they're not sure of what they want. I said earlier, it's hard for us to be in a relationship and we talking about standards when you haven't spent the time to identify and possess the standards that you want. How am I supposed to be able to connect with that? How am I supposed to embrace your standards when you haven't taken the growth and maturity to identify within what you want? It goes back to what I said earlier. You have to know what you want. You have to know what you want. You can't expect someone else to know your standards if you don't.
That's true. And again, and when you don't, it goes to that statement I said earlier. You have people with the next thing and not the best thing. And that statement came out of a conversation that me and the young lady was having at work this week. And when she said that, I said, well, I'm going to write that down. I said, because I'm going to use that one, because I know it's going to come up somewhere. I wasn't sure where what you was going to bring today. I said, but I know that's going to, I said, because that's so true. People are in relationships because it's the next thing and not the best thing. And so what do I mean by that? Like you said, you have standards, you left one thing. First of all, what is the next thing? Okay, you was in one relationship, you left that because of something wasn't about. And so now you just with the next thing, so they're waiting for the best thing. You know what I'm saying? So now it becomes, well, you just in the next thing because it fits for the right now. You know what I'm saying? Until you get the best thing, which is what you really want in life, which matches your standards. You know what I'm saying? And where people can meet those expectations of that it put into your standards. So it's sad that individuals do that, because really they're not taking the time to continue. Because even like right now in my life, I have standards and I know what I want. But if I don't take the time still right now to build upon those things, and I just jump on the next thing just to keep me fulfilled or keep me busy or keep whatever it may be, you find yourself going through things or experiencing certain things or being exposed to certain things that could have been prevented if you would just did you waiting for the best thing. You follow what I'm saying?
That's right.
And so we have to learn that the next thing is not always the best thing, because the next thing is you're just doing while you're waiting for the best. And sometimes you can just have a little bit more peace, a little bit more joy if you just wait for the best thing. And I think a lot of people don't wait for the best thing because, they either, the two key words, they either get alone or they become lonely.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
And we have to learn how to be alone. Alone and lonely is two different things.
That's right.
Being alone is a wonderful thing. Being lonely, you have to know how to deal with that. Because being alone, you're getting to do the things you want to do, achieve the things you're trying to achieve. But the hardest thing I think for some people is loneliness. Some people cannot be cannot deal with loneliness, and so that's when the next thing comes into play instead of the best thing. And then we find ourselves being scarred, more
That's right.
than what
That's
we
right.
should have.
That's right.
You know, it's nothing much more rewarding when you see yourself take the time to obtain the things that God has for you, with God being the one to supply your needs. You know what I'm saying? And as you're waiting for the person that God is going to send to you. You know what I'm saying? And there's a difference. God sending and you doing. That's where the next thing and the best thing comes, is you doing. When you find yourself always jumping on to the next thing, it's because you're doing it. When God brings it, it's the best thing because he's bringing it to you.
That's right.
And so, we want to be able to have a plan for our life, and write the things down and make it plain, and work towards those things. But there's also seasons where, we have to learn to just be still.
That's
you
right.
understand what I'm saying?
That's right.
And just wait on the Lord to help you to either achieve or to receive the person that he's bringing to you.
I agree.
Or even sometimes a job, because even with job, we jump around, grabbing jobs that may not be the job that you should have right now. Because if it is, it wouldn't, interfere with some of the other things that are priorities or should be a priority. You know what I'm saying? And so, it's just a matter of faith and again, like you said, having those standards and then applying them standards with the word of God, and then allowing your faith to kick in, to be able to know to know what season you're in, when to do, when not to do, when to be still, when not to be still, and so forth.
You made valid points. I mean, because we have a lot of people that truly miss out on really the patience it takes for a relationship to mature at a certain level. And those two people both having expectations and standards, what it takes for one, the behavior part, to come in perspective that aligns with the guidelines and the rule that both of them need to stand up this relationship. Arthur Mahaley spoke of that your life can't arise any higher than the standard that you set or the company that you keep. So that's both phase. That's personal and outside. Your life can't rise any higher than the standards that you set or the company that you keep. So what are we saying? If you have low or no standards, your life and your relationship won't feel nearly as fulfilled as it could. And that's where people have to look back at themselves, and I know my social media family don't like this word, but look at these unrealistic expectations that some people may have. Because some of us do, but then it's only unrealistic if it's not able, and this is the reason why I use that term. It's only unrealistic, and this is my opinion, if the both can't grow with them together. If you're forcing these expectations down my throat and you expect me to bond, then there's always going to be pushback.
I'm going to say it another way, because I know we also push for time right now. I think when we speak of those standards and expectations, and as I already said, the next thing versus the best thing, we have to learn how to stop treating people, and I'm going to make you laugh because I'm going to get a little humorous here, but we have to learn how to stop treating people like their job. What do I mean by that? You only in it for the benefits.
That's right.
We have to stop treating people like they're a car. They only trying to get you, only using them to get you where you want to go.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
We need to stop treating people like they are a shoe. Meaning, you're going to wear meaning, you should be a saying, if it don't fit, don't force it. But you got some people who fitting them on like a shoe and wearing them down just for what they want and what they need.
That's right.
And so when we learn to put things in proper perspective, and like I said, stop treating people like their job, like their car or shoe, and again, take the time to understand the standard that God has set for relationships, only then will you be able to set those standards and deal with expectations that are reasonable within that relationship.
That's right.
And when you're not able, and when you see that those expectations are not lined up, then that's where the love comes in, and you learn how to just continue to do what you have to do while God is dealing with the other person to do what they need to do to make sure that relationship grows.
I agree.
So,
I agree.
That's about all I can really say when it comes to standards and expectations, because expectations can either build a relationship or will destroy a relationship.
That's right.
And sometimes the love and the bond can be so strong, but like you said, the expectations can be so high that there is no conversation, there is no compromise. It's I want what I want, when I want what I want, and relationship is not going to grow.
One of the things that's very surreal when we maintain our standard is that when we hold on to our standard, we offer the opportunity for the relationship to grow. When you hold on, when you maintain your standard,
I agree.
You're actually allowing your relationship to grow. You're not letting go your standard. Because by holding on to your relationship, you are allowing the growth and the maturity of the relationship to take root.
But now I am going to say this, because I know we want to. I am going to say this. It's good to have standards, but also once you get into a relationship, those standards need to be reevaluated. I have to say that because sometimes our standards may be because of what you've been through before. So now I'm setting this standard, and really you're setting this standard because of what somebody else did or did not do. I want you to really think about.
Are you saying that in all cases or individual?
I'm just saying that in general. That's just a general statement.
Okay.
Because it's true. Sometimes our standard comes from our childhood bringing. Our standards may have came from something that we have adapted or we have equipped it from our parents. Sometimes our standards may have come from a job we made. That you have to reevaluate both, and that just came to me. Sometimes you have to, because to me, when I'm thinking about my lifestyle, my standards changed as I was going through life.
Okay.
So again, when it comes to relationship, no matter what type of relationship it is, whether it is husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend, children and parents, employees, employers, I can honestly say, when I'm thinking of a relationship, I don't think a relationship standards has stayed the same from the time that you have been with that person to the time that one person has gone home to the Lord.
Okay.
Along that path, something has changed.
Okay.
So although you come in with these standards and expectations, when you really love somebody and you're sitting down and you're having those hard conversations, there are reevaluations on not just one. I'm just coming, but on both. Because if I keep the standards of a person that I was 20 years old, some of those standards are not the same as me now. Being in my 50s. That just kind of came to me as you was making your last statement. So we have to be realistic in both of them. We really do.
I think what you just said really just rounds out the discussion that both play a major role in the growth and the maturity of a healthy relationship. The part you just mentioned about reevaluating, that's huge. Because as the relationship gets older, as the journey continues to go on, there's going to be opportunities and chances for reevaluations for the next higher ceiling of where the relationship is going. You know, we constantly say on Life with the Polites, it's all about growing together while enduring the learning process and embracing the journey. Your standards and your expectations is embraced as your journey continues to mature. I know we're up against the clock, but we want to take this opportunity for food for thought for many of us, is that I believe that it's very crucial that we hold fast to our standards. And how we do that is that we develop those standards within. The time that aligns us with the Word, the time that aligns with us with growth and maturity, and we have standards. A relationship is not worth letting go your standard. Because for one relationship that will walk this way, another one will walk in the next way. Your standards brings the value and the worth that the Word says you truly have. And we need to hold fast to that in regards of developing and having strong relationships. We have to. The meaning of letting our standards go and lowering our standards for a relationship makes nonsense. We have to maintain and hold fast to what we believe that we will accept, what we will not accept, and how both of those align with the structure of relationships through God's Word.
I think, I don't know how I want to say this. I think one of the scary things in relationship is, you know, when you have two adults talking and you hear one person saying what I will accept and what I will not accept. You know, just hearing that, you know, could be harsh. Because as you were saying it, I'm sitting here as an adult, and, you know, because I'm being advocate right now, and I'm saying, can you picture being an adult and you have someone telling you what they will accept and what they will not accept? You know, it reminds you of how when you were a child and your parents is talking to you. So, you know, could it be that when we are sharing our standard, or we are explaining our standards, and we're having conversation about our standard expectations, that's one of the words that we need to try to change? Because I don't think it's a matter of what you will. How can I say it? I don't want to sound so harsh and say, well, Mr. Polite, you know, this is what I will accept, this is what I will not accept. You know, I think it's more of, if you love me and understand me, this is who I am. You follow what I'm saying? Or this is what's important to me. You follow what I'm saying? Because I think communication is a lot about how you say things and the choice of word. You follow what I'm saying? Mr. P, you know, this is what's important to me. You know, this is what I value. Compared to, this is what I would accept, this is what I want to accept. That's like you're giving an ultimatum. You follow what I'm saying? And sometimes, you know, when you begin to give ultimatums in relationships, ultimatums and saying your values, people can receive it and will be more willing to adapt or make the change, because if love is there, they know how important it is, and they don't want to harm or hurt you, and they want to see you grow.
I agree.
So choice of words is very important.
I agree.
Very important. It drives the action, the verb behind it.
Amen.
You follow what I'm saying?
Amen.
So I don't want to drive a action word where it's forcing anyone to do anything. I want to drive an action word that is making my partner think about what is important to me, so that he can act or she can act.
Amen.
You follow what I'm saying?
Amen.
Because you got two adults.
I received that.
You got two adults. You follow what I'm saying? And I'm a firm believer in, if I can do it myself, I'm going to do it myself. But when you want someone else's input or someone else's help in aiding you to what it is that you're trying to do or trying to be or or whatever, you know, you don't want that action verb to be a what's the word I just said? Were they obligated, or
Okay.
you know what I'm saying, or they're forced. That's the word I use.
Okay.
So I think in relations, honestly, people who don't mind meeting standards and expectations, if they're not feeling that they're forced to do it. You find what I'm saying? Let them do it because they want to do it. Because they love you. And not doing it because if you feel that you're always doing something because someone is saying, this is what I need, and it's a force, then it feels like as if, you know, you're being how can I say, you're a child. You feel like, you know, someone has, you're being controlled. And I think that's the word. No one wants to feel they're being controlled to change to meet the needs of the other person. So it's how you say it when you're delivering what you need from that other person.
Amen.